So back I am with another Card Fight Vanguard deck profile. So hope you guys enjoy. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, go to the page. Let's get started. This time it's my Great Nature Bigbelly deck. So Great Nature Bigbelly. It's been out since November 20th, if I'm correct. So it's been out for about 3 months, maybe, depending on when this video goes up. For me, it's been a month since it's December. For me, when I'm recording this, but for you guys, when it uploads, it'll either be early February or late January, so it'll either be 2 or 3 months by then. But this deck is not a deck I liked at first, and the reason why I built it is for the sole purpose that I bet myself, or I promised myself, that if my Great Nature deck from before, and I admit it's not the best, and I admitted to myself that if I win this fight against my friend with it, then I'll buy this deck in real life and build it and upgrade it because it deserves it. And what do you know? I miracle heal with the deck and then I win by bullshit. And when I say by bullshit, I mean I top deck. So I basically used the power of anime and God on my side and won. So now I have no reason not to build this deck. So I guess I'm doing it now. Okay, so anyways, let's get this started. First up, the starter is Blackboard Parrot. So 6k base, auto when rolled upon draw a card. Then if the opponent's Vanguard is grade 1 or greater, put a quick show ticket into your hand. And before I get onto that, this deck does not have orders in it. Once more, I hate putting orders in my deck unless they mention very certain cards in the deck, such as how the Royal Paladin order mentions Blaster Dark, Blaster Blade, MLB in it. That I'm fine with putting in my deck. The one from Bermuda, not so much. There's a deck built around it, but I hate that deck because the order doesn't really, in my personal opinion, just doesn't seem worth it, so I don't care about that order. And since MLB is the only order that actually names certain cards, the other orders don't matter to me in the slightest, so this deck doesn't have orders in it. But anyways, let's continue. So pretty much a standard draw card and then get a quick shield. So really nice. And if you're wondering why it's Blackboard Parrot, it's because I just like his look. He looks cool. Now onto the triggers. We have 4 crits of Application Researcher Bigbelly. If you know me, then you know I like putting cards in decks that used to support the same card back in G, and if they got retrained, they're going in the same deck whether they have synergy or not. Such as how Bigbelly used to be the critical trigger that went to Soul and give plus 5k to Van if the Vanguard was Bigbelly. What is this deck? Bigbelly. What is this? Bigbelly. They go together whether other people like it or not. 4 copies, and also it's a 30k shield. I can see why you want to put PGs in this deck because the deck does draw a lot, so you won't be minusing from throwing down PGs. But at the same time, why would you use PGs when you got a 30k shield and only cost 1 card? And considering how many cards the deck can get in hand, it's not really necessary to put in a draw PG. I feel like this is better, so 4 copies. Plus, it's a crit, and then your opponent will maybe take it. Who knows? Next up, 4 copies of Castanet Donkey. Front trigger. Okay, I'm only doing this because from my experience, I believe the next trigger is a front trigger, yep. Okay, I'm only doing this because front trigger-wise, I have never sacked fronts against, well, when I need to sack fronts, I don't. Which is why there's 8 fronts in this deck and no draws. Because every time I attempt to sack a front trigger, it doesn't happen. And I know at some point I'm going to need it. The only deck I do sack fronts with is Paladins. So, might as well increase my chances by putting 8 fronts. And honestly, like I said before, this deck doesn't need draw triggers because it draws enough on its own. So, might as well not deck myself out and try to increase my chances of seeing a front trigger. I want to see fronts so I don't get shut down by damage triggers. Because no joke, the only time I actually do see fronts is at the very end of the game where it doesn't matter because my opponent's dead anyways. Or I'll just damage check them when I want to drive check them. Either way, 4 copies of both Correction Chinchilla and Castanet Donkey because I want to try to get more fronts. And finally, Dictionary Go is the heal trigger because it's Dictionary Go, and he's also the heal trigger I miracle healed with, so I feel like I have an obligation to run him in this deck. Now on to grade 1s. 4 copies of Silver Wolf, continuous rear guard. If it's in the back row, gets plus 4k till end. It gets permanent plus 4k. So it's a permanent 12k base. So it's a 12k booster at all times if it's in the back row. And that's really good because that guaranteedly makes it whatever you call in front of it, unless it's a trigger, it's going to be a 20k hitter. So if your opponent's at grade 2, it's an immediate 15k guard. Or at the very least, it's a 10k guard unless the opponent's playing MLB. Either way, really good card, 4 copies, and if I'm correct about Bigbelly's wording, you can abuse its skill if you were to give it 8k more. I'm not so sure. I'll get back to that when I read the card off. Next up, grade 1, Expert Grader Nezu Toby. So, AK base, auto Vanguard, when its attack hits, draw a card. So that's really good. It's just a basic. Most players, they'll take, or me personally, I'll take damage if it's like the first turn and you're going second and you just attack me. Unless the ability on hit is like something major, like deal your opponent 2 damage, or look at top 5, do a thing. Unless it's something like that, I'm gonna take it because you're only getting 1 draw off it. Well, my friend decides otherwise because 7Cs is a thing. But anyways, it's a free draw if your opponent decides to take it, and normally they will because they want to use Counterblast at grade 2. And auto, when it retired from rear guard by a card's abilities, if you have a Vanguard Bigbelly's card name, countercharge 1. That's important. This deck does use up a decent amount of Counterblast, so having countercharge is really useful. And a lot of cards die by ability in this deck, so this is basically guaranteed to go off. So, if you're running low on Counterblast and you want a target to kill this turn, call this. It's just going to be beneficial to both parties, so 4 copies. Next up, 4 copies of History Schooler Bush Bokek. I don't know why I was about to call him High Schooler. But anyways, 8k base, auto Vanguard Circle, 1 place, discard a card from hand and draw a card. So this is basically the standard 1 place. You get 2 draws, and if you're going second, you can go draw from starter, get a quick shield, discard that quick shield, and draw a card. So nice little combo. And then auto rear guard circle at the end of the battle that it boosted, retire it, and one of your rear guards gets plus 10 till end of turn. So that's really good. This deck focuses on power stacking the hell out of the rear guards, and Bigbelly's effect basically goes off when you retire units during the battle phase or battle phase or end phase. This happens during the battle phase, and what do you know? It retires itself. So basically, you get a free draw out of it, and something gets plus 10. So really nice card, 4 copies. Next up on to grade 2s, 2 copies of Blusher Parakeet. 9k base, auto Vanguard or rear guard, 1 placed, counterblast 1, look at top 7, reveal it to 1 grade 3 from among them, put it into your hand, shuffle the rest back to deck, and this unit gets plus 3 till end of turn, and if it's on rear guard, it retires itself at the end of the turn. So, it's very helpful. It can search you a grade 3 if you so need it. I mean, that's mainly why it's here. It can search a grade 3, but the other reason why it's here is because it gives itself a 3k and forces itself to retire. So, yeah, and for Bigbelly to go off, if you don't know, you need to have units with 20k power. This becomes a 12k, so all you need to do is put 8k on it, and most of the boosts that you do are 10ks. So it basically becomes a guaranteed 22, which means it gets to restand, and it retires itself, so Bigbelly's other effect goes off, and it can search you a grade 3, so if you don't have Bigbelly in hand, but you got the other one, this can hopefully get you a Bigbelly. So 2 copies, good card. Next up, 3 copies of Geograph Giant. Continuous rearguard circle. If it's on additional rearguard, it gets plus 8k. That's why it's here. It's a 9k base on an Axe Out 2. It's a 14 plus the 8k. It's a 22. It already hits Bigbelly standards. That's why it's here. It's also a panda. So it meets Bigbelly's panda-ness. So that's why it's here. It's because it's still good. Even though it was one of the very first cards in Great Nature to be released in standard, it still does work. 3 copies. Next up, 4 copies of Measured Fusa. So 9k base, 5k shield, auto Vanguard or rearguard, 1 placed from hand, counterblast 1, look at top 2, call 1, and the other goes to drop. So, or the rest go to drop. So if you don't call 1, both of them go to drop. I still suggest calling 1 regardless, even if they're both triggers, because they're not going back to deck, they're going to drop. So if you see something, you might as well call it. It doesn't matter if it's a trigger or not, just might as well do it if both suck. But it's still a good card because it can possibly give you more rear guards from top deck and could possibly increase your chances of draft checking triggers. And then also, auto rear guard circle once per turn. When it attacks, if your Vanguard is a grade 3 or greater, Soul Blast 1, choose one of your rear guards, it gets plus 10 till end of turn, and at the end of the turn, retire that unit. So, once more, Bigbelly goes off when your units hit 20k. This makes it so that if they even get 1k more, like such as Blusher Parakeet or Geograph Giant, or like you combo with that grade 1 that can retire itself to give something plus 10, it can hit the 20k mark really easily, and then the unit dies at the end of the turn. I normally like to stack it on the counter charger, but if I don't have the counter charger, I'll put it on something that isn't going to... I'll put it on something that hasn't hit the 20k mark yet. Either I'll put it on the counter charger, or I'll put it on something that hasn't hit the 20k mark yet. Or if I have like the counter charger but I ain't gonna hit the 20k mark, and I have something else that will hit the 20k mark, I'll put it on the 20k mark instead, because I actually need the 20k mark. But that's still really useful. Good card. 4 copies. And the last grade 2, 4 copies of Spool Mary. Frankly, my favorite one. Auto rearguard circle once per turn. When it attacks, if you have a Vanguard with Bigbelly in its card name, you may have this unit in one of the Vanguards get a plus 10k power up till end of turn. If you do, at the end of that turn, retire this unit, and auto and wrote upon, you may call this card to rear. So pretty much, you ride it, and then you ride on top of it with Bigbelly, call it from Soul, and then when it attacks, it becomes a 19k attacker, Bigbelly becomes a 22k attacker, and all you need to do is give this thing 1k more and it hits the magic number. So, really nice card, 4 copies. And this deck is also $30 now that I remember it. And now into grade 3s. 4 copies of Pursuer of Perfect Circle, Flow Panther. I just want to say, I love this card's artwork. It looks beautiful as all hell, and I just adore it. So, 12k base, Excel gift, sorry. Act, Vanguard or Rearguard, once per turn. Soul Blast 1, choose one of your units, and it gets plus 10k till end of turn. At the end of the turn, retire the Rearguard chosen by the effect, and if it's on Van, draw a card. So, pretty much, something gets plus 10, hopefully hits the magic number, and then the unit dies at the end of the turn, and if this unit's on Vanguard currently, you get to draw a card. So, pretty much, you could call Flow Panther down, get an Axel Circle from Bigbelly, call Geograph Giant to the Axel Circle, so that already hits magic numbers, call Spool Mary, call something else, use Flow Panther, plus 10k to this thing so that it hits magic numbers, attack with Spool Mary, boosted by that one grade 1 that can retire itself to get something plus 10. Spool Mary goes to 27, and then the Rearguard dies, so then the boost disappears, but it still gets another 10k, so it hits 29, and then everything on your field is at the 20k mark. Really helpful. And then also, when retired from Rearguard by your card's abilities, if you have a Bigbelly Vanguard, you get to shove this to Soul. And your deck does need grade 3s in Soul, so if you can't just re-ride Bigbellies, it's a good thing that this can save itself to Soul. So, 4 copies. And speaking of the big man himself, famous Professor Bigbelly. Excel gift, 12k base, auto Vanguard circle. When your Rearguard is retired by a card's ability during each battle phase or end phase, you may draw a card. So, if it's your opponent's turn or your turn, you get to draw a card guaranteedly, and if your opponent's playing Cogro, it's just very fun when you can just use their own weapon of mass destruction of killing Rearguards that effects against them. And also, auto Vanguard circle when it attacks, counterblast 1, choose one of your 20k power or greater Rearguards and stand it, and if you have a grade 3 in Soul, stand all of your 20k power or greater Rearguards. So, on your first grade 3 turn, there is no way in heck you're getting an actual grade 3 to Soul. So, on the first grade 3 turn, you're only going to be able to restand 1, so I don't suggest going all out with the Counterblast and Soul Blast. But second grade 3 turn, yeah, go all out. Make sure that everything can restand, because it says everything will restand. So if you give it to the boosters too, they'll restand. Go all out, hit big numbers, you get multiple attacks. Good card, 4 copies. And now into the gifts. So Excel 1, you do not use this. Ever. Just don't. It's not worth it. It's... The only reason you would run this is if you're trying to kill your opponent very quickly, but it's only a difference in 5k to Excel 2 where you get a free draw out of it, and this deck can get enough power on its own. If you really think your opponent's going to survive longer than the Excel 1, then yeah, get the Excel 1, but, I mean longer than Excel 2, then get the Excel 1, but otherwise, Excel 2, just don't waste your time with Excel 1. Next up, the Quick Shield. So the standard, when one of your units is attacked, it gets plus 5k power down to battle, so basically a 17k if it's on the ban. If you get to grade 3 with this still in hand, normally you discard it by then. But that's pretty much how this deck works. I don't like, just to recap, I don't like to use orders. I'm not even sure what order you would put in this deck, but I honestly don't give a crap because I feel uncomfortable having a card in my hand that just, well, one, it does cost stuff. Like, it costs Counter Blast and Soul Blast, and this deck kind of does rely on both of them. And it doesn't do much for me because I can't call it, I can't write it. I hate having a card in my hand that I can't do crap with, even guarding wise. If I have triggers, at least I can use them to guard. I'd rather have a handful of triggers than run 4 copies of an order. And that has happened once. And I'm still sticking by that statement because I'd rather have a handful of triggers than orders. Because, honestly, orders feel clunky. They feel like they take up space to me. And you can't ride them. You can't call them. It just feels like it's not worth running, basically, to me. The MLB one, it's worth running because it doesn't cost anything to use it. And you can get it, and you can easily recycle it. While other orders can't be recycled, except for the Lyric one, and it just doesn't do as I wish it does. So, no orders in this deck. If you want to put orders in, you can. I don't really care, but in my deck, in my personal build, I'm never going to put orders in the deck, no matter what the situation is. Well, that was the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and don't do the Patreon. See you all next one. Don't forget to stand up your Vanguard.
Thank you.